Hello and welcome to The Print. So there's a new movie coming up on 13th of December. It's releasing on Z5. It's called Dispatch. And it's about a crime journalist. And whenever it's about journalists and journalism, I think as a journalist, I get very excited to know how this world is going to be represented. And of course, we also have a scam. If it's a crime journalist, there has to be a scam, there has to be a crime. But what is this particular scam? And why this movie? And how did it pan out? We have the director Kanu Behl to tell us. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for
So
having me.
let's start with how did the idea evolve for you, and why did you choose this particular? It's a 2D spectrum scam. So why this particular scam, or was it one of the scams that you just focused on, and the larger idea was something else?
Yeah, I would say so. So the roots of the film lie somewhere in 2016 because I had finished Titli already by then. I had done a advanced draft of Agra, and it was in financing, and I knew that I had some time to toy with something new, and around that time Ishani, my co-writer, and I decided to collaborate. And शुरू में when you're getting to know a new writer, you're just sitting and faffing, and for days you're just talking because you don't know अभी क्या करने वाले हैं. And around that time, Gauri Lankesh happened, and I remember both of us sitting in a room really disturbed and beginning to talk about it. And we just kept on talking about it. And the next day we were talking about it. And the next day again we were talking about it. And we realized that both of us were feeling that something was shifting. There was something that was uh, uh, we were not able to pin down what it is, but it felt like a little bit of an inflection point, and it felt like something really important was just beginning. We were hoping it was not, but it turned out to be. It sort of brought in a wave of similar cases,
Hmm.
and and we thought that it's something that's worth exploring, that we
Hmm.
should look at more closely. And simultaneously we also realize that we don't have a background, so we will need solid research if we are to understand this world and do anything about it. And we launched into this 18 months period of just talking to a lot of obviously crime journalists, cops, some people from the underworld, uh, going to a lot of hearings, a lot of cases, just observing there, getting the basic lay of the land. And that is where something really interesting started to emerge, which was that we felt that now today we live in a world where it is not even possible to say who is doing what, is doing where, and what is behind all of this, which means, I mean, I'm trying to say that an overall picture started emerging where we felt that this whole world is very foggy now. It's very obtuse.
Hmm.
And as we transition into this corporate crime, and the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer, that wealth gap is increasing. The power is also getting concentrated, and that became a really interesting sort of bigger top down look at this world. And both of us started talking about in the room कि यार ये कोई क्यों नहीं कर रहा है. Why is every crime, or why is every journalistic film about some hero who wakes up one day and solves a case and the world is all right again, whereas this is the truth that we are feeling on the ground. So that became a really interesting diving point for us, where we said it'll be really interesting to see a film which is not really about the case. It becomes a little bit of a ruse to bring you into the film.
Hmm.
But really, through that, you are essentially painting a world where you're saying, अब कर लो क्या कर सकते हो, तुम आए थे देखने की किसने किया. But this
Hmm.
is not about that. This is not the world that we live in anymore. So that became the external sort of backdrop and wrap for the film. But internally also, through the character, we were also very bothered by the fact that a lot of these films, usual journalistic films, look at people as journalists, as if there is no human being
Right.
inside. So from even from the inside, we didn't want it, but we eventually very organically landed at trying to do more Faustian kind of journey, because the moment externally हम ये बात करने बैठे कि अच्छा अब ये दुनिया थोड़ी सी वैसी सी है, और हम ब्लेम कर देते बड़ी आसानी से कि सिस्टम है, एक सिस्टम है जो जिसमें सब खराब है. But then we also started talking about what is the system. I mean, we are the system. Each individual makes the system. So if this system is what we are going to talk about, then might as well address each individual's responsibility in creating that system. And that's where Joy Bug's sort of character came in, right? So that we wanted to go back, and also, the moment we entered this world through this very, it became, I mean, because we were trying to address what the individual's place is and how that is contributing to the system that we are calling foggy obtuse, it very naturally led to this flawed character who is desperate in his own way, and is contributing to the fog in his own very fucked up journey. So that created Joy Bag, and we just sort of went from there. So just, it's a very rounded answer to your question, but it is not about the scam really. The film is not about kya ho raha hai in that sense, in the urge of the plot. It's more about aa jao aur ye puri duniya dekho ki what is making up this world.
Right. In fact, I realized that there is a line as well, right? This character is saying that the beach में बहुत सीरिया है, आप कहाँ घुस रहे हो?
Yeah.
And she says that, it's not like those underworld days that this guy or this person did this, and you had a clear answer and front page news.
Yeah.
Right now, there is no way to pinpoint who this person is.
Yeah.
And interestingly, actually, I'm coming to this. A lot of what has happened, I feel, is there is also a re-emergence, at least on OTT world, of going back in a very nostalgic manner to the days of the underworld. Matlab, that happened in the early 2000s, mid 2000s sort of. We had a lot of films, Once Upon a Time in Bombay, 1, 2, 3, jo bhi, and then there were a lot of it. And then suddenly, I think in the last 3 years or something, there's also going back. And there's usually a journalist in the midst of it. Maybe he's not, or she's not the focus of the plot, but you'll have this, because the nexus between journalism and police and crime has always sort of existed, especially in the Bombay crime reporting. So I'm coming to where that this is also, I felt, a very specific Bombay crime reporting where there is a history of the underworld. The same would be very different in Delhi, I would feel, or in North India, because you don't have that explicitly here. I mean, of course there is. So, and then there's a point where I feel like this film is in the middle of that. The underworld is sort of gone, but there are these new crime lords, so to speak, who are coming in. And like you said, there's new kind of crime that's happening. So I was also looking at their phones, right? This is the beginning of their technology and photo lena and all of that. So the other point is Scoop. The reason I'm bringing it up is because Scoop is also about a journalist who basically gets the scoop, and then her career basically completely evaporates at the aftermath of it. It is also the coming in of the digital. Now, there's basically, like you said, there's a lot of things happening while Joy is trying to crack open this case. But his motive is, मुझे खबर देनी है, because he's beating up a guy, खबर देनी है. His own house is, family, his life is crumbling. And so when you're trying to bring all of these elements together, which bit was the more challenging? Because there's a lot of threads going on, like you have already pointed out. But when you were zeroing in, we are trying to show a character that's flawed. We are trying to show a journalist that's not like a hero figure, or we are showing a scam jiska matlab pardafash nahi kar rahe hum, matlab it has already happened. So what was that one thing that was the most difficult while balancing out everything else, because there are a lot of things happening in the film? And like I said, I was also picking up those threads ki the era is very interesting because it's bilkul beach mein, na idhar hai na udhar hai. And there's also Bombay crime. Or is it not? Like, because I felt like it was a lot to do with Bombay crime journalism, because though ya to maine cheezein dekh li hai, and to maintain that as well.
Personally for me, always the toughest thing to do is get the spiritual core of the film right, and create the correct time and space for the film. And by what I mean by that is to have enough balance of reflection within the film so that the audience can get time for themselves. What usually happens is पहले plot आता है और story आता है, उसको आप कंज्यूम कर लेते हो, फिर कैरेक्टर आ जाता है,
Right.
फिर आप कैरेक्टर को कंज्यूम कर लेते हो, और उसके बाद सब खत्म हो जाता है यूजुअली फिल्मों में, क्योंकि कुछ कंज्यूम करने को बचता नहीं है.
Hmm.
But what there is another, I feel, really third interesting space in a film, which is after you've consumed the story and the plot, and then you've consumed the character,
Hmm.
and you're still here, you're still in the scene. Now you don't have anything to consume.
Hmm.
Now what will you do? You're sitting there, as an audience, and you have nothing. You're not being parosoed anything anymore. I think that time within a film, within a scene, within a shot is the most interesting space for me, because it is now your time with yourself as an audience. I feel like you have to now deal with what you want to do, and that is where I think interesting spaces within a film open up for you to become a part of the film and start having a conversation with the film. It's not just a passive experience of watching something, where we are also very used to filmmakers mythicizing themselves, treating themselves like these all-knowing types, putting themselves on a pedestal, almost like politicians, and saying, आज मैं आपको बताता हूँ इसके साथ क्या गड़बड़ है, उसके साथ सब मुझे पता है, और मैं आपको बता के भेजूंगा, आपको सब पता होगा जब जब आप जाओगे यहाँ से. So that's a very informative way of looking at cinema, whereas cinema also has a larger sort of responsibility to you know get inside your gut and let your own gut do the work of what are you feeling about this. So always for me, the most difficult aspect of a film is to crack that healthy balance of what you think you might be watching, but what you are really watching, what is shifting within you. And so yeah, I mean, a lot of prep you do, a lot of time you take to make your to get ready to make your film, and it is all of that prep is to build the all of this ruse in the background. But really, what I'm always trying to do with my films is to create that space जहां आपको सब बता भी दिया जाए और आपको छोड़ भी दिया जाए कि अब आप देख लो आपको क्या करना है.
Okay, so there's one thing that came up for me, with Agra, with Titli, and with this, and I don't know if it's a very conscious choice or it's also sort of happening, is that there's this nexus of patriarchy in a certain sense, masculinity as well, and intimacy. I feel like there's a lot of violence embedded within these three, and it's coming through in different ways. Obviously, these are all three different films in very different ways, and it's looking at very different worlds. But there's this underbelly of violence, and when I say violence, I don't mean the underworld violence. Of course, you understand. So, what I wanted to get your thoughts about that. It does come true, like even in the fact that he was getting beaten up a few moments ago. Joy's character is getting beaten up in the pursuit of trying to get that breaking news and trying to, get that photo. But there's that underlying, I feel like as an audience, like you said, when you're watching that film, like every few minutes, you're just like, something's going to erupt. And when I say erupt, it's not like guns blazing erupt.
Yeah.
But there's something happening, whether it's that scene where they're looking for a house.
Yeah.
That it's just and you almost feel like, you relate when you're going to check a house and how landlords behave with you.
Yeah.
And you're also like simmering beneath. So there's a simmering beneath that happens in all of these three films that I was thinking of today. So wanted your take on that.
I mean, what can I say? I mean, I guess we are used to watching a lot of stuff that doesn't simmer. So
Right.
when something simmers, even though that should be par for the course, we say, yeah, but there's a like a little simmering quality about it. So I don't know what to say. Let me just say that I respect my audience a lot. I feel like they are going to spend 2 hours and come in and watch this. If it's a theatrical film, they're going to pay for the ticket. I might as well respect their time and not infantilize them. And if you're not trying to do that, and if you're really trying to speak respectfully to the adult audience, then you're trying to do a piece which is as rich in complexity as our lives are. And our lives are simmering all the time because our lives are not a fairy tale. And going back to story, there is no story our lives have. We in the morning we don't wake up and say, oh, I'm in act 2 and or I'm in middle of act 2 now, or you don't know. So when we don't have a story in our lives, why should a film have a story? Or when our daily lives are full of conflict, why should the cinema that we watch step away from it? और जो बाकी आप थीमेटिकली बात कर रहे हो, I mean, this underlying simmering quality is because it's a basic principle of writing a scene, because हर character एक emotion का transaction करता है दूसरे से, and it's also probably comes from me trying to explore sexuality in different ways, because I feel like that's the strongest point I have to reveal the innards of a character, because when you are in that secret space with either yourself sexually or with another person, you're naked, and the audience has a great opportunity to know you in that sort of situation, because there's nothing left to hide. अगर
Right.
आप किसी के साथ उस तरह की सिचुएशन में हो, तो आप कुछ नहीं छुपा पाते हो, because they can look into your eyes. It's such a visceral physical act, right? So why should I lose the opportunity to let my audience peek into the soul of not just one but two characters simultaneously? It's just too, delicious for me to not go there. And it's the larger world that we live in, that कहने को तो हम हैं land of Kama Sutra, but in our lives, in our cinema, or in our public discourse, sex is still frowned upon, or sexuality is still frowned upon. I don't get it. I just don't get why we are so hypocritical about it.
I think it has to be. I think that one of the problem is it has to be polished. I feel that is the problem. I think it's not so much that we do have problem with sex, because when we are saying we are a land of the Kama Sutra,
Yeah.
वो visually ऐसे box को tick करना होता है, तो visually वो किताब box को tick कर रही है क्योंकि
Yeah.
ancient culture and all.
That's what I'm saying. But
हाँ.
I guess also what you mean is it has to be packaged
In a certain way,
and it has
yes.
to be consumptive. But then again, I feel like it's not my responsibility
Right.
to give you a package or a neat little thali to consume, which doesn't make you feel which doesn't upset your stomach. My job is to upset your stomach or gut and make you reflect on the larger lives that we are leading. And if all of this you find around yourself, then why should I not talk about it? You finish it from our lives, and I will not make these films.
Okay. So how, so now we talk, I mean, even we write about, as you know, in cinema journalism, we do write about how Manoj Bajpayee, when he came to OTT, so he became the star, something that wasn't happening at all with his films at one point. Everybody knew he's a great actor, but there's certain kind of stardom that was not there. And then he started getting more variety of roles, and we would see him. So how easy or difficult was it to, tell him that this is the story I want to do, and how easily did he agree to doing this?
It was actually like meeting a unicorn,
Okay.
because first of all, this story is really interesting. I didn't actually have to go to him with the film.
Okay.
We met socially in a very small gathering on one of our common friends' birthday. And like it's like a 10-15 person gathering, holding a drink, standing at the window. He walked up to me and he said, "यार मेरे को तेरे साथ काम करना है." So I was like, okay, a lot of actors say that, and we had that moment. We spoke for 5 minutes, and then I walked off into the night saying, "हाँ ठीक है, okay." Manoj Bajpayee said, "मुझे तेरे साथ काम करना है." The next day he called me and he
Okay.
said, I've seen your work. I think we should collaborate. I have just called to say that I meant what I said last night.
Right.
And that was so encouraging for me, because I was like, oh, he really does want to do this. So that is the great thing about him. And that's why I started with Unicorn, because to find an actor who is interested not just in you, but more than that, he is interested in constantly exploring newer stuff, constantly pushing the envelope. That is a godsend. तो तो अब जब शुरुआत वहां से हो जाती है, that two people are on the same page, they are saying let's do something that will push the envelope further, कुछ interesting करते हैं, then it just becomes very easy. Then I met him a couple of times. I spoke about something with him. He said, "नहीं यार, ये नहीं. I don't see myself doing this, or it's not. It was an ensemble piece." So he said, "मुझे ऐसा कुछ नहीं करना. If you have something else, da, 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 da." Then I went back. I did my own thing. Then when I had this idea, I went back again to him. I said, "I think you'd be a good fit for this." He read the script. Next day, he met me. I gave him the script. Overnight, he read it. The next day, he said, "Let's do it. I love the film. I think it's a relevant film. It should be done now." he was the one actually who brought Ronnie on board.
Okay.
So just a pillar to and a complete unicorn to have.
Right. Yeah, because my next question was about to be, because RSVP is a very out and there commercial sort of production company, and then I wanted to ask, like, how did you veer into that? After, let's say, for Agra and all. Of course, I know you've co-written Plus X and Dhoka and all. I'm not saying it's, but I was curious because it's RSVP, which I know has a
Yeah.
certain bank of movies that they have done in the past few years, and they are big. But there's also one unique point I've realized: they do push projects which might not look as
Absolutely.
commercial in the way we understand, big stars, big numbers, and big songs, and certain
Absolutely.
flashy pauses.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a nice, interesting blend, but it's also releasing. Do you think it's an advantage also now? With OTT, there is also a sense of, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad, it's a double-edged sword. So there's a section of audience which thinks now, I have realized, कि अगर कोई film OTT में release हो रही है, it will be substantial. मतलब in the sense कि थिएटर में तो frivolous चीजें भी आ जाती है. That's what a slow mindset has been over the past couple of years. But एक मनोज बाजपेयी है, एक कि ये OTT में भी आ रही है. There is somehow a greater intrigue among people, even more than what used to be पहले की थिएटर रिलीज हो रही है कोई फिल्म and there's this whole publicity going on. अभी वो intrigue ज़्यादा है audience में when they see कि like a particular star who's known for acting is going to, and people tend to end up watching, people tend to watch it for sure as opposed to theater में हाँ देखेंगे, maybe not. Do you think that is happening as well?
I honestly have no sense of whether that is happening
Okay.
or not. I think I end up being too much in my own little hole. I'm mostly inside my own head and just busy with these worlds that are getting built.
Right.
I haven't. I mean, it's an interesting way to look at it. I had not thought about this.
Right.
But yeah, possibly. I think also because the OTT space has definitely done an interesting thing, that it has brought cinema to the world right in front of our faces. It's like right here. It is. You don't have to go and seek it anymore. It's like तुमको नहीं भी देखना है तो ये है, ये है. So that is a very interesting thing that has happened. That the watching experience is now democratized. You have much more to choose from, and you have a lot more quality to choose from. So maybe that's why this whole shift that you're saying is happening. That the moment something is on OTT, you're saying, "Oh, okay, this is part of that universe." Maybe that's coming from there.
Okay. So just the last question, because you said you've spent so much time in researching and meeting cops to, underworld people to, is there anything in particular that stuck with you? Because personally, I think when I started working as a journalist, I came from a completely non-journalism background. I remember one of the first days जब मुझे कोई recording दिखा था studio में in a previous job, I was so fascinated क्योंकि मुझे obviously the output दिखता था और वो input दिखता ही नहीं था. So I was wondering if there's something that stuck with you when you were doing that reporting, especially with how crime journalists work. Anything in particular?
Just a second.
Huh.
You can start from there.
Okay. Just ask the question anyway, so just with the answer.
Just
You're,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I would say not so much of a surprise, more of I mean, I had a sense of it, but it got sort of reiterated once we started researching. And the most interesting thing was that despite now so much technology entering the fray, uh, especially the world of crime journalism is still really, really, actually, even more than before, it is more dependent on human now, like human intelligence. And because now it almost feels Orwellian in terms of this kind of, you get a sense of this surveillance state,
Right.
not just in India, the world over. It's happening
Right.
everywhere because power is getting concentrated in the hands of a few, and they're controlling a lot of what we see, what we watch, how we form our opinion. More than like before, now it is becoming about direct human to human interaction and trying to get to the truth through that source. I mean, a very interesting example of this is post the whole pager blasts.
Yeah.
You've heard how they've gone back to just talking to each other face to face, and they've had to go back to that. So that pretty much was very interesting while we were researching, but it's something I had a sense of, and then it felt like it got.
I think this was an interesting insight also to filmmaking, and I got the opportunity to ask about so many, and a lot of opportunity not to ask about so many questions as well. I think that interview would go on for hours. But yes, like I said, Dispatch is coming out on 13th. I have watched it and I've absolutely loved it. I think it's always interesting and fun to sometimes watch the world that you work in to be shown on the big screen. And thank you so much for giving me. I had a lot of long-winded questions as well. I had gotten deep into those films, I think. But thank you so much for coming and talking to me.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely talking to you.